In December of 2004, I was gifted two things from my grandmother, a Game Boy Advance SP and Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories with the official strategy guide. I remember many of car rides playing this thing. I actually still have the same copy from back then. I remember playing this and enjoying my time since it was a Kingdom Hearts game I could play on the go, but I haven't fully played the GBA version of this game since 2006, I want to say. I remember having some hard times playing this, mostly being stuck on the final boss for Sora's campaign, and beating it at a Chipotle of all things. But this game would see a re-release in the US on PS2s in 2008. I think I remember getting it the following year. I was 13 at the time and had to start buying some of my own games if I wanted them, or wait for my birthday or Christmas. So once it came out, I remember not liking it as much as the GBA version, but beating it in about 2 or 3 sittings. The game's not long by any means, it's just there, I think is the best way I could describe it, and I haven't fully played the game until it was re-released one more time on the PS3 as part of the Kingdom Hearts 1.5 Final Mix. That came with Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, first time for American audiences, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days movie, which we will get to that one soon, and Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, the version that was on the PS2. The one I'll be looking at is the one re-released on the PS4, Kingdom Hearts 1.5 plus 2.5 Final Mix. There is a new re-release called The Story So Far that I have not purchased, and since it's just 1.5 plus 2.5 and 2.8 on 2 separate discs, and I already own both separately, I didn't see the need, but that's enough of that. Let's get started with Sora and the Gang's new adventure, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. I'll be looking at the PS4 version like I said before, but I'll be looking at the GBA version a bit, so let's get started with that story. So, at the end of Sora, Donald, and Goofy's adventure, they find themselves on a winding pathway chasing Pluto. Afterwards, they don't explain whether they caught up with him or not, which is going to continue on in the series, not knowing where Pluto is. Anyway, while our heroes were snoozing, a black-robed figure appears and tells Sora to come to a castle. He follows after the hooded man, and the gang walks right inside this eerie-looking place. The robed man says that this place is Castle Oblivion, and the moment they stepped over that threshold, Sora and co had forgotten everything that they had learned once they stepped inside. Makes sense. Since Sora didn't want to listen to Riku, the gang decides to go through the castle, and they find themselves in their memories, where they see figments of people that they've already met on their last adventure. And I'll be honest, nothing really interesting happens on the floors themselves. They are retellings of the abridged version of the worlds from Kingdom Hearts 1, and the company seems to, after every floor, find themselves losing more and more the farther they go up. According to the black-robed figure named Marluxia, it's due to the castle that these things are happening, but in all actuality, they're due to this new character named Naminé, who is described to be a girl that has the powers over memories. She doesn't want to be here though, but the organization is keeping her here. Along with Marluxia on the top side, there is Larxene, the only other female member. We're not at that game yet. And Axel, a character purposely inspired by Final Fantasy VII's character Reno, which is actually what Axel is based off of. On the basement side, there's Zexion, Vexen, and Lexius, who are kind of just there. Yeah, they just sit around doing nothing, really. They explained in another game why they are sent here, but otherwise they are just there, nothing's really going on for these guys. Which, from a story standpoint, makes me wonder, why are they included? They do make some advances once the people topside start to show they want to take over the organization, and they try their best to stop them, but other than that, from a storytelling standpoint, these guys don't matter except for to be bosses for the sake of being bosses. Sora makes his way throughout the castle, running into Riku, who apparently wants nothing to do with Sora and says that he's here to rescue Naminé, seeing how as they both share the same memories that Sora says he has. Sora, being conflicted, figures if he can find Naminé that everything will make sense. Well, more sense. Sora slowly forgets everyone he met up with to this point except for Donald, Goofy, Jiminy, and Naminé. He then gets angry at them when they tell him to think about how Riku and Sora have the same memories, making the exact same promises. Sora storms off to get to Naminé for her to tell him that his memories are indeed false, and that she doesn't belong there, that she was forced to, and that she wanted some friends. Sora, now only having memories of Naminé, says he doesn't care about false memories and that he still made a promise to protect her, even if it was a lie. Afterwards, they run into Riku once again, who tells him that his memories are false and tries to kill Sora, but Naminé shatters Riku's memories, causing him to go limp and lifeless, where Larxene tells them that he was actually a puppet fabricated by Vexen and recreated with the memories implanted by Naminé, saying that all Sora's memories, problems, and knowing this girl was all lies. Sora realizes this. says that they may be lies, but he doesn't care, and says that they are his now, and he will honor them even if they are lies. After beating Larxene, Naminé says she can restore their memories after they take care of Marluxia. The gang leaves Naminé behind, where she gets kidnapped by Marluxia. And then, when the gang runs into Marluxia again, he's fighting Axel, which, yeah, I forgot to kind of mention to him, which, like I said, most of the organization members don't really bring a whole lot except for to be obstacles in Sora's path. Sora then defeats Axel and makes his way over to Marluxia so that way he can save Naminé. After he takes care of Marluxia, he follows Naminé into a sleeping chamber where she tells him that he will forget about this game and remain asleep until the second game starts. And that does it for Sora's campaign, which, looking back on it, really doesn't mean a whole lot except set up concepts that will start in the next console game. The bad guy's motivation is to overthrow people we haven't seen, and what they say don't mean a whole lot until you play the next game, which even then isn't addressed until Roxas' story in the DS game. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Like I said, Sora's story is over, but now we have Riku's story, Reverse Rebirth, that takes place before, during, and after Sora's story. Riku finds himself asleep somewhere away from the king until a disembodied voice says he should go back to sleep and everything will be fine, or he can wake up and take this card. Riku says it's a boring place to sleep and grabs the card, which makes him appear in the castle's basement, where he goes through all the worlds Sora did that he supposedly went to as well, and has no interactions with his memories and just fights the endgame bosses. Basically, this is just to give Riku a reason, story-wise, to cleanse himself and reflect on being such a jerk in the last game. Riku makes his way up to the higher floors in the castle, trying to get out of the basement, running into the bottom floor's organization members, who just sit around in the dark spouting exposition that doesn't mean anything until the next games. Riku then runs into Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, who is still lingering inside him, telling him that he will take control again. Riku tells him to go screw himself, says he's done being a pawn and wants to be a warrior of light. No, just someone who fights for the side of good. There's no class change or anything like that. Riku wonders if he needs to take a shower since he can't get Ansem's stink off. Not like that. Riku then makes his way higher and higher until he runs into the Rikuplica. The puppet tells him how great darkness is, how weak Riku is, and how he hates being his copy. Riku quickly makes work of the puppet, where we cut over to Naminé, saying that she is a shadow of Kairi. Okay, this seems like the best time to do this. Naminé is something that this game doesn't bring up, the concept of nobodies, which are just shells of people who are strong enough to hang on to themselves when their hearts are taken by the darkness/heartless. I'll get more into that, but for now, all you need to know is that Naminé is Kairi's nobody, and that because of Sora having Kairi's heart, Kairi has a nobody since princesses of light are not supposed to have any darkness in their bodies. So when Sora died, Naminé was created, which explains why she can manipulate Sora's memories and those closest to him, based on Nomura's logic. Riku finally accepts the darkness that lingers in his heart to finish off Lexus, but it lets Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, closer and closer, until Mickey shows up with his light to keep Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness, away. Zexion shows up trying to guilt-trip Riku for his misdeeds in the last game, and that blows up in his face. Riku then decides to let the darkness into his heart without having the negative repercussion that comes for the people that usually rely on the darkness. Mickey shows up for real with a card that helped get him there. He gives it to Riku, which brings him to Twilight Town, where a fake Ansem shows up that Riku calls out because he smells different than Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. Hey, I guess when you share a body with a guy, you learn their smells, I guess. No. This guy is Diz, who pretended to be Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, and brought him to the castle so he could go on this cleansing journey, and tells him to seek out Naminé. Riku finds her, and she tells him that she can get rid of Ansem, Seeker of Darkness if he goes to sleep like Sora, locking the memories of him away along with his power to use the darkness. Riku complains that Sora does whatever he wants all the time, and that someone might as well do something right. Riku says no to going to sleep since he can't complain to Sora if he goes to sleep too, and says he'll just deal with it, taking care of things his way. He meets up with Diz and Mickey, where Diz gives him a black cloak that will help them hide from the organization, except for Mickey for obvious reasons. Riku runs into Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness, and tells him to come back to him, that his power can help. Riku says how can it make him stronger if someone like Sora was able to beat him? Riku fights him off, and he and Mickey run into Diz and tells him that they are going to walk the path of light and darkness, ending the events of Chain of Memories. Then, after the credits, we are shown a blonde kid walking through Twilight Town with Axel, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of him. Okay, well, that was needlessly vague and complicated to not alienate people that didn't grab this game for the GBA, then went straight to the PS2, but still made people alienated since people didn't know what was going on. Those problems are no longer relevant since all the games are out at this point before Kingdom Hearts 3, and they are all easily accessible now. Story-wise, I can see the problems, and they don't mean a lot with all the vague and foreshadowing being thrown around, but it doesn't matter if the game's fun, right? Well, let's talk about that then. So, since this game was originally created on the Game Boy Advance, we have a new way of playing in regards to these cards. That's right, they don't just serve purposes to get through the castle, they're also the way you play the game. And what this comes down to is basically a bastardized version of a game of war, because all of your attacks, spells, items, party members are all based on cards that you can get throughout the game. Then you build a deck, then fight enemies who are using their own cards. This was kind of cool when it was created for the Game Boy Advance, but something was lost in translation when making the switch to the PS2. When they remastered this game, you can tell that everything just seems kind of like it's watered down version of the first game, and it's even made more apparent with the PS2. And the sprites look fantastic on the Game Boy Advance, everything except the crunch AMV that were put in for cutscenes. Back on the GBA, everything looked really good considering that it was a PS2 game put on a handheld device. But when making that switch back, it just looks like a concept of what Kingdom Hearts was supposed to be for the PS2. There's no platforming, there's no real story since everything's a recap of a Disney World. And this gameplay mechanic of these cards, you get them by smashing breakable items in the overworld, or you buy them from these Moogle shops. You can also get them for beating bosses. Then based on leveling up, you can increase your health, how many cards you can hold, or you can get these new slights. With that in mind, you can make an interesting amount of different command stuff, that is kind of interesting, but some of these slights aren't really worth using if you're just planning on trying to get through the game. You end up throwing away anything that's lower than a 5. Okay, maybe I should get into that. So, like I said, it's a game of war. You throw out cards and hope that they don't break your cards. If you feel like running through the game with nothing but 7, 8s, and 9s, then you keep a couple of 0s, can break any card or slight as long as it's played afterward. Play it too soon and they will stun you and completely take care of you. Though they try to make it where using slights over and over again is not considered a good thing considering that you lose the first card that you put into it, but you can easily manipulate the deck structure to keep using slights over and over again without having to worry about that effect. Especially since there are item cards in the game that allows you to reload the entire thing, which the game gives you pretty early on. With that being said, the bosses are actually really interesting. Each of them have their own individual mechanics that you have to try and get around and come up with different strategies, rework your deck, and just completely make these cards viable, and are in no way exploitable, and do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that's all good for Sora, but once it comes to Riku, he doesn't get to edit his deck. The only thing he gets are preset decks that can't change unless he gets an enemy card that gives you different effects based on you playing them. And this sort of makes the game easier as well, since you don't have to edit your deck, especially when you get the new ability, Dark Mode, which, remember fighting Riku, all those awesome slights he used against you? You can now use it against enemies and completely take care of any kind of boss. On top of that, he gets this new mode that was introduced for the remake, where it's basically an actual game of war within the game of war. If you or your enemy play the same value card at the same time, then you activate this mode. Then you keep playing higher and higher cards until you win, then you use a slight, and it's really easy to manipulate this in the game. Both campaigns won't take you long if you're just trying to get through it, and you won't have to level up too much since you'll end up having to grind out to get better cards. Also, for whatever reason, this game, whenever you beat an enemy, you have to go pick up the experience points instead of just getting it for destroying the enemies. I never got that. It did make sense, because if you're over here beating up an enemy and then one blows up over there, and then you gotta stop whatever you're doing, go pick up the experience points, then come back, keep laying the smack down, and when you just have to dodge, just go pick up your experience points! Wow. Okay, so the story's nothing to go on, the gameplay is nothing to write home about, making this whole game feel like a distraction for the next game in the lineup, Kingdom Hearts 2. Which is what it is, so at this point, I can only recommend this to people who are curious or want to get more out of the story. Well, with this out of the way, at least the next game we have to look in the lineup is Kingdom Hearts 2. This is when the game starts really getting good. So, once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again real soon.